everybody to take their seat.
Am I going first or you going first? Or how?
I'm going to go first, but I can wrangle them if you want me to wrangle them.
Okay.
If I could have everybody's attention, thank you. I want to thank everybody for being here. We have rows designated for each. If you're a member of one of the committees, one of the subcommittees, if you could make your way to your seat there in the appointed place. And I'm Chris Wells. I'm the Executive Director of the Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality, and I'm going to turn it over immediately to Governor Reeves.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all, and look, I really do appreciate so many of you coming out today. This is an extremely important next step, and it's important that we get it done. I know that many people in the press, all they want to talk about is COVID-19, and I appreciate that. That is certainly their prerogative. But as I said back in March, for me personally, I believe that we should all get our shot and live our life and get back to work, and that's what we're doing in the state of Mississippi. So I also believe that for those individuals that are most comfortable wearing a mask, they ought to wear a mask. For those individuals who are most comfortable not wearing a mask, they ought not wear a mask. It's a day of personal responsibility in our state, and so I want to personally thank all of you for coming out. You know, I appreciate your participation in this kickoff event for the Governor's Gulf Coast Advisory Committee. I am truly grateful that you've all willing to get on board and serve on this important committee. It was over 10 years ago that the Mississippi Gulf Coast experienced sudden, unprecedented challenges. Beginning on April the 20th of 2010, the BP oil spill was the largest in American history. In the 87 days that followed the initial disaster, it's estimated that over 4 million barrels of oil spilled into our Gulf. The Deepwater Horizon's explosion left 11 dead, 17 injured, and the momentous task of working to restore the damage caused to the Gulf of Mexico and to our Gulf Coast by this spill. This event rocked the lives of so many on our coast. Our economy, our natural resources, and our way of life took a massive hit. But as we've seen time and time and time again, when the Mississippi coast gets knocked down, we get right back up and we come back stronger and bigger and better than ever before. Thousands of coast residents put on their boots and their gloves, and they went to work cleaning our beaches and our oceans. They've worked tirelessly to restore the beauty of our coastline and bring back wildlife and commerce. Thankfully, our efforts were supplemented by numerous federal funding sources as well as the Restore Act, which was passed following the BP oil spill for the purpose of restoring and rebuilding our coast and improving the resiliency of our natural resources. To date, we have allocated approximately $685 million via the 3 Deepwater Horizon restoration funding streams to almost 100 different projects along the coast. Under the Restore Act alone, we have allocated approximately $350 million with over 50 projects currently in progress. Since my time as Lieutenant Governor and now serving as your 65th Governor, I have made it a priority to ensure that all funds meant for restoring our coast have gone strictly to our coast. As long as I'm governor, I will continue to fight to ensure that the Mississippi Gulf Coast receives every single penny obligated for these purposes. Right now, I am working alongside our many legislators, our private businesses and citizens, and our government partners to ensure that these funds are spent in ways that best benefit the long-term progress of the Gulf Coast. This year alone, Mississippi will allocate approximately $72 million in Restore Act dollars towards restoration projects. Each of the Governor's Gulf Coast Advisory Committee's 7 subcommittees will be asked to recommend between $10 and $15 million worth of projects for funding to further the recovery process. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, we are no strangers to disasters. From Hurricane Camille in 1969 to Katrina in 2005 to the dozens of other tropical storms and hurricanes that have brought destructive winds and waves, the Mississippi Gulf Coast knows a thing or two about resiliency. The one constant with all of these storms is the capacity for our coast residents to get back up and help themselves and help their neighbors and help our communities. The aftermath of the BP oil spill was no different. Though this disaster brought unique challenges we hadn't necessarily faced before, y'all went to work helping your fellow community members and assisting in the official recovery missions. I want you to know I'm proud of our Gulf Coast. I'm proud of the incredible people who live up and down the coast, the incredible people who work here. And when times get tough, I'm proud of the way we respond to challenges. No matter what hardships you face, you always face them head on, ready to bounce back better than ever before. Again, for all of you taking your time to help build consensus around the best projects to help grow Mississippi, I appreciate your dedication, and I appreciate you agreeing to serve on this committee. Your dedication to Mississippi and your dedication to this place we call home, the Mississippi Gulf Coast, does not go unnoticed. Please know that your efforts here will make a real difference, and thousands upon thousands upon thousands of your fellow Mississippi Coast residents will benefit. As we take the next step, I want to again thank you all for your willingness to serve, your willingness to do the things that are necessary to invest these resources. I truly do believe that everyone in this room, while we may not agree on every single project, we may not agree on every single process and initiative, I truly believe that every single person in this room is here because we all want the same thing, and that is to invest these monies in a thoughtful, responsible way that will make a big difference long term for our kids and our grandkids. My friends, if we can all go into this with that at the top of our mind, we're going to be successful. And I truly believe that everyone here has that approach at heart. So again, I want to thank all of you for being here. I'm going to turn this over to Chris and let him walk through the processes as he sees it. I think it's important. It's also required by federal law. And so another minor detail, but we certainly want to thank the director of the Department of Environmental Quality, who has served in numerous roles in that agency for many years. I was honored that he accepted my request to serve as the executive director. It is the lead agency as is defined within the federal statutes. And so, Chris, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And I don't know if you were going to stay for all. We got a little bit of business to do with the committees. Again, my name is Chris Wells, the Executive Director of DEQ. I think it's important for the committee members to understand the context within which you're operating. And so if we put a few slides together, I'm going to walk through those. Okay. Sorry, we're logistics on the roll. So at any rate, we'll go ahead and get started. This first slide I wanted to include I think it's important for the committee members, again, for context and to understand sort of to first distinguish between some of the different funding streams that are in play. And there's a lot of confusion. I understand. I live it every day, and even I get things confused at times. And so I wanted to start here. It's important to distinguish between the restoration funding streams that came out of the litigation with the responsible parties for the Deepwater Horizon event. Those you see here, and I'll get into more detail about them, but these are the three funding streams that were specifically for restoration and that DEQ administers. In context, there's the economic damages, which also were part of the resolution of the litigation. And then Go Mesa also comes into play. And the governor, it's very important, and the directive that we've gotten at DEQ and at DMR and MDA is to ensure that we're taking a coordinated approach to everything. And so, but it is important to distinguish between the funding streams, and particularly where people tend to talk about BP money, the BP money. And in reality, there are several different funding streams that make up the BP money. Go Mesa is separate, but economic damages and these three funding streams are the restoration funding streams. I include this slide. The lawyer in me just can't. It has to come out, right? So I like to use a car wreck analogy to explain how this works. If you and I are in a car wreck, because I run a red light, you're going to sue me. First, you're going to sue me for the actual out-of-pocket damages that you had, the damage to your car, your medical bills. That is natural resource damages in this context, or NERDA, as we refer to it. That's the middle oval you see here. This portion of the resolution, this funding is intended to compensate the state for the actual injuries to the natural resources that occurred as a result of the spill. If I was grossly negligent in running that red light, as a legal term is grossly negligent, it was more than just I just didn't see that it was a red light. I was doing something I shouldn't have been doing, looking on my phone or whatever, right? And I was grossly negligent. You might be able to get punitive damages against me. It's above and beyond the actual out-of-pocket expenses. That is the Restore Act. The Gulf of Mexico congressional delegation got together and ensured that the Clean Water Act was amended in order to have 80% of the civil penalties assessed against the responsible parties would directly benefit the states. And that act to amend the Clean Water Act is the Restore Act, and it's very prescriptive in terms of who's eligible and what's eligible in terms of projects. The third funding stream, if it turns out I ran that red light intentionally trying to hurt you, maim you, kill you, then I'm probably going to go to jail, right? There's criminal consequences. That is what's represented by the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation Gulf Environmental Benefit Fund. It was a trust fund that was established so that the criminal fines that were assessed against the responsible parties went into this trust fund, and NIFWIF, as they're referred to. We love our acronyms in the environmental world, and we like to phonetically pronounce them when we don't have time to spell them out. So NIFWIF is the trustee of the Gulf Environmental Benefit Fund, and that's where the criminal fines went to. Each one of these funding streams has its own set of processes, procedures, limitations, restrictions on the types of projects that can be done. Under the consent decree with BP, I, as executive director of the DEQ, am the trustee for the state for purposes of funding projects under NERDA. And to fund a project under NERDA, we have to have the approval of 4 federal trustees that serve along with me as the state trustee on a group called the Trustee Implementation Group. The only way a project can get funded, and that's the process. For NIFWIF, they are the trustee, and their board decides what projects get funded. And DEQ is the consulting agency for NIFWIF. They're required under the criminal plea agreement to consult with the state, and DEQ is that consulting agency. The Restore Act is what we're here really to deal with. That's what these committees are set up. And particularly, and not to get overly complicated, the Restore Act is broken down into what we like to refer to as 5 buckets. And in particular, we're going to be focused on buckets 1 and 3. When I say we, I mean the projects that these committees will make recommendations for are to be funded under the Restore Act. Under the Restore Act, DEQ is designated as the eligible entity under bucket 1 to the entity that can receive funds and to implement projects. The governor is designated under the federal statute as the member of the Restore Council. And those two bodies things are important because under bucket 1 we have to work with the Department of Treasury to get funds, and I'll get into the process a little bit more later. I'm trying to get through this fast so I don't waste y'all's time, but I want to make sure you had the context. We have to deal with the Department of Treasury to get money under bucket 1, and we have to deal with the Restore Council to get money under bucket 3. And what's important is to know is that unlike Go Mesa and the economic damages, this money does not come directly to the state. It's sitting in a trust fund at the Department of Interior, and we have to submit project grant applications either under NERDA or under the Restore Act, buckets 1, bucket 3, and receive grants, reimbursement grants at that. But the projects that you all will ultimately select will be funded under buckets 1 and 3. The way this will work, and I want to throw this slide up real quick. I put this slide in here. Shows you the gradient of flexibility as you go down on the left-hand column there, from bucket 1 to bucket 3 to NERDA to bucket 2 to NIFWIF. The lower you go here, the less flexibility we have. Flexibility in terms of the discretion that the state has for what projects are to be funded, but also more flexibility in terms of the types of projects that can be funded. And this is kind of a busy slide, but it's the statutory language. This is the language from the statute that delineates or describes what types of projects can be funded under buckets 1 and 3. And they roughly correspond to the 7 subcommittees. And so that's how this group is organized into this different subcommittees. And the idea is that you all will, as the governor mentioned, meet as subcommittees and compile a list of recommended projects in the range of $10 to $15 million worth. And then we will work with the governor to figure out how best to get those projects funded. Over time, we've engaged in a number of different planning and engagement activities, and it's ongoing. We have an annual summit every year, and we take public input on things and various stakeholder input. These are the priorities that we've heard from those that live, work, and recreate on the coast. These are the overarching priorities that have been set that we use to guide our activities. And again, the committees are loosely organized in that way too, to ensure that we are taking a holistic and coordinated approach as we can. When it comes to environmental restoration, we know that everything we do upstream benefits downstream, and the environmental benefits are intertwined. So we've invested in a wide range of restoration projects, the benefits of which overlap each other. One prime example of that, when I say overlapping benefits, the benefits from the environmental standpoint, if we can do some water quality projects upstream, that improves water quality in the Sound, which benefits oysters, which benefits oyster fishermen. So it's all there's an overlap between economic and ecological restoration. In fact, one example of this is our water quality improvement program, where we've invested a little over $100 million, or we've allocated over $100 million between buckets 1, 2, 3, of Restore Act and Go Mesa. So we're overlapping benefits from the standpoint of and coordinating efforts between funding streams. We've invested, when it comes to economic restoration in particular, we've invested or allocated, I keep saying invested, it is an investment, but we've allocated funding over a wide range of economic restoration projects, and the majority of those projects, 90% of them, have been under the Restore Act through the work, the kind of work that y'all will be doing over the next couple of weeks. And this slide gives you a little bit of an idea of the types of projects that have been funded. And I again note the overlap between economic and environmental restoration in that last column there, because we know that anything we do that helps oysters as a natural resource also helps oysters as a commodity and as from an economic standpoint. Just real quickly, kind of where the governor mentioned that we have $72 million. The way this works is that, again, the money is not sitting in an account at DEQ or anywhere else within the state. It's at DOI. Not only that, but the consent decree contains a payment schedule. So BP makes an annual payment into the trust fund, and we can only spend money that's in the trust fund. We can only get grants for projects up to the amount that's actually in the trust fund. COVID impacted everything, right? And one of the things that it resulted in us, we've skipped a year in terms of allocating funds under the Restore Act, which is a good thing in some respects. I think we have an opportunity here for the committees to look at maybe some bigger dollar figure projects than we've been able to look at it in the past. Typically, under Bucket 1, you have $20 million a year to work with. There's the $20 million that was paid by BP in April of 21 is there. It's in the trust funds, ready for us to submit grant applications. There's another payment will be made April of 22. We are typically on an annual funding cycle, and so we typically try to have projects in the works because there is a process, and I'll get to that in a minute. And the timing of that is such that we are a little bit under on a tight schedule to be able to announce projects and get them moving, the process moving, so that we're ready to start getting grant applications in place and drawing down funds when the trust fund payment hits. This was Bucket 1. We have $40 million. The $72 million that the governor mentioned is the combined total under Buckets 1 and 3 that are available to be allocated. The two payments that were made, or the allocations under Buckets 1 and 3 from last year, and then this year. So $40 million under Bucket 1 and $32 million under Bucket 3. All right, so the process, I've mentioned it a couple of times. This is where it gets. I know that I'll be very candid, and I recognize that one criticism that folks down here have, and it's legitimate criticism, is how long it takes to get money from DEQ through this program. This is one of those times when I don't mind at all passing the buck and saying it ain't my fault, right? The reason it is because this process is so complex and convoluted, thanks to the way the statute is crafted. But this lays out the process. We have a project idea portal. Every project that we fund under all three of these funding streams that we're talking about has to come through that portal. What you're going to receive, each member of each committee is going to receive a spreadsheet. We need to make sure that everybody, if you didn't sign in when you came in, make sure we get good contact information for you, including an email address, a good email address, so that we can email you the spreadsheet. That's what you will be working from. We've gone into the portal and we've pulled the projects that coordinate with each committee. You will meet. You will compile recommendations. The co-chairs will report out to us. Then the process starts, right? We figure out where best to fund a particular project. We then have to write a list of those projects, write them down on a document. One's called the MIP, the Multi-Year Implementation Plan, and one is called the SEP, the State Expenditure Plan. MIP corresponds to bucket 1, SEP corresponds to bucket 3. And we put all these projects, if we believe they're eligible, we write them on those lists, and we send the MIP to Treasury, and we send the SEP to the Restore Council. They look at it, and they say yes, no, it's either eligible under the statute or it's not. Now, we've got a good track record. We've not had a single project that we've proposed on the MIP or the SEP to date. Not one of them has been rejected as ineligible. And part of that is because we take the time. When you make these recommendations, we're going to take each one of those projects that, again, have come through the portal, then come through this committee, and then it's going to be on a list of recommendations from you. We will take those projects, and we will then go sit down and talk with the sponsors or the folks that propose those projects or whatever we need to do from a due diligence standpoint to make sure that those projects are eligible, that we believe they're eligible. We'll put them on the list, and then we send it in for approval. Treasury will look at the MIP and say, yes, they're eligible. The Restore Council will approve the SEP. Then we have to go back and submit grant applications on each one of those projects. And no, we didn't make up that process. I can't overemphasize that's just the way and that's why it takes so long. It's a months-long process, and I wish we could shorten it. We think we've shortened it about as much as we can because we finally got Treasury to understand that the types of concerns that have been expressed by the public and stakeholders in all 5 of the Gulf states on the burden of the process. So that's generally the process. So next steps, and I know I flew through all of that. We wanted to make sure everybody got a copy. If you didn't when you came in, we want to make sure everybody gets a copy of this presentation so you can have it and digest it. Here's what we're going to do next. Our friends at Hancock Whitney Bank have graciously allowed us to use a conference room on the 7th floor of their building in Gulfport on the 24th of August and the 1st of September. We're going to meet. We're going to have a day long of all the committees. We've got a time slot for each committee. Tourism at 9. We'll send all of this to you in an email. But tourism at 9, eco restoration at 10, economic development at 11, seafood at noon, infrastructure at 1, workforce development at 2, and the Small Business Committee at 3. Meet on the 24th. We have the 1st also reserved and set aside if that's needed for follow-up meetings. There's been and then as I mentioned earlier, once the committees have met and you've compiled a list of recommended projects between, valued somewhere in the $10 to $15 million range, we'll have the co-chairs report out to us what those projects are, and then we'll take that list and we'll work with the governor to figure out how to fund them best. There has been an issue or questions raised about potential conflicts of interest because that portal that I mentioned, anybody can submit a portal project idea. And a lot of people have individual members of the public, members of NGOs and other nonprofits, cities, counties, you name it. It's across the board. There's several thousand projects in the portal, and a wide range of different entities have submitted those. The only eligible recipients of funds are governmental entities and nonprofits. So any project that we do, if somebody submits a project through the portal, not only is that project not guaranteed to be funded, but just because someone submits it doesn't mean they get to implement it. It actually has the money has to flow to a nonprofit or a governmental entity. So I hope that might help alleviate some concern in terms of conflicts of interest. The other thing in terms of conflicts of interest, I think, just to address it, is if you're a member of a committee and you have submitted a project idea, or you're a member of an organization or represent an organization that has submitted a project idea, you can simply recuse yourself from the committee discussion of that project. And so those things combined, I hope, address any conflict of interest concerns. And that, I'm looking at my notes to make sure I cover everything. Oh, last thing. The meeting's on the 24th and the 1st. We will have virtual participation option, conference call, Zoom type. So anybody that, if that helps in terms of travel, I know I've heard from one of the co-chairs this morning that they were going to be out of town on the 24th but could participate by Zoom. That's going to be an option. So if there's COVID concerns or travel concerns, we can work through that. Are there any questions from any of the committee members? Okay. Why am I surprised by that? I appreciate your patience as I walk through this presentation. Again, I thought it was important for you to understand the context that you're being asked to work within. The governor said it several times, and I've said it a couple of times. We can't thank you enough for your willingness to participate in this effort, and I look forward to. There's a lot of familiar faces in here to me. Some I haven't seen in a while. A lot of new faces, and so I'm looking forward to working with each and every one of you. Thank y'all for being here.